The fastest growing smartphone company in history is not Apple or Samsung or Xiaomi like you might expect. It's actually a brand called Realme. I spent the last few days playing with their record-breaking 2022 flagship phone, and I think it's time we talk about them. This is the Realme GT2 Pro. I gotta say, these guys do not have the clearest naming convention. There's a Realme 8, an X50, a C21. Doesn't sound very real to me. It doesn't make any sense. But what you need to know about the GT2 Pro is that it's the first time that this company has ever made a top-tier flagship. And it's the fastest Android in the world by a mile. Underneath the phone, you also get a pretty decent quality TPU case, a 65-watt fast charger, and a USB-C charging cable. Better than most flagships then. So, this Realme company has been more than doubling in size every single year. How on earth do you do that? Here's what I think. I think that the market for affordable smartphones is held back by the market for high-end smartphones. Because most companies want customers to go and buy their flashy flagships, they have to purposefully make their lower-end phones less attractive, less good-looking, and also usually not as cheap as they would otherwise be. But Realme hasn't been burdened by that. Because they so far haven't made a flagship phone, they've not been trying to upsell people towards anything. And so, with every single device, their only objective has been, how do we make this the most unique and value-crammed device possible? Some have had racing stripes, others bold colors. Quite a few have just had this massive Dare to Leap motto plastered over them. It looks kind of like one of those drunken tattoos that you regret the next day. Not all of their designs are winners, for sure, but they're consistently packed with really strong hardware for the money. And that doesn't change here. In fact, the Realme GT2 Pro is less than flagship price. I've been told around $700 to $750, but at the same time, they've managed to break 3 major world records with it. It has the largest internal cooling system, it has the widest ever ultra-wide camera, and it doesn't just use the same top-end Snapdragon 888 chipset as every other current flagship. This is the first phone to ship with the next generation of that, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. But the very first thing you'll notice is not those things. It's the design. This is classic Realme. It borrows elements from other Oppo and OnePlus devices, because if you didn't know, Realme belongs to the same parent company, but it adds that wacky Gen Z flair that they're developing a bit of a reputation for. It's pretty tastefully done here. The flourishes of chrome dotted around the body, the ultra-fine texture on the power button, the contrast of matte and glossy on the back, the papery textured wallpapers. It's almost uncharacteristically classy. I would definitely have scrubbed this signature from the back. To me, it just looks like they've written the word noob, but you only get that on the special edition variants. And, oh, I haven't even mentioned the most interesting part of this. The material. So, you know how smartphones are going through a bit of an eco-revolution right now, with their recycled packaging and nothing included in the box? Well, this is Realme's way of doing it. The back of this phone is made of a biopolymer, which is derived in part from recycled paper, and therefore uses 35% less CO2 to make. And on one hand, it is a bit strange. Like, when you think of a flagship phone, you don't think of recycled bottle caps melted together with paper mache. But in execution, it just reminds me of leather. It's got that same plushness, but also that slightly coarse texture for grippiness. And so when you combine this back, because I am a fan of leather phones, with the seriously alluring screen on the front, this starts to feel like one of the most complete hardware packages that money can buy. Like, when you look at this form factor, it looks high-end, yes, but it doesn't immediately strike you as one of those nothing-missing, feature-crammed ultra phones, right? Well, as far as the screen's concerned, it kind of is. Literally, every corner that I kind of assumed they would cut, they didn't. It's Super AMOLED for deep contrast. It supports true 10-bit color to be able to display even more of a range. It's Quad HD Plus resolution for more pixels than you'll ever need. 120Hz refresh rate for fluidity with, I think, the highest ever recorded level of touch responsiveness. All topped off with LTPO 2.0 technology, which allows the refresh rate to scale all the way down to 1 Hz when it can get away with it, to save up to 50% battery consumption. Plus also, it's just a nice, clean, flat screen with no weird jutting corners. I mean, I don't personally mind curved screens, but the point is you'll struggle to find something to complain about here. Actually, this is the internet. But okay, let's address the elephant in the room. This is the first phone with next generation processing power. How fast is it? Kind of amazing. Kind of underwhelming. And hey, if you're enjoying this video, then a sub to the channel would be really good. let's be very clear, this is powerful. This is the most powerful smartphone I've ever held or even looked at. If you want to put a number on it, while Samsung's S21 Ultra scores around 700,000 points on Antutu benchmark, this passes 1 million. I nearly fell out my seat. I still remember the day where all I wanted in life was to get my phone to 10,000 points, and here I am holding something that passes 1 million. I've been getting consistently higher Wi-Fi speeds than on my S21 Ultra, wherever I'm testing from. And also, it blitzes through games, with seemingly less of a performance hit from sustained play sessions. And while the metal rim around the outside does get toasty doing so, the actual core CPU temperatures are kept at a healthy level throughout. But there is a counterpoint to this. And it's partly the fact that, well, I mean, Android games and Android apps, they aren't really getting more demanding, and last generation's chipset already ran them really well. But it's also partly the fact that this doesn't feel like the most polished, optimized software experience. I get the impression that the only reason this is the first phone to have the next chip is just that Realme spent less time working with the chip. I've had a couple of cases where my widgets haven't been updating. I've noticed that the charging animation just kind of disappears when you swipe up, looks a bit unfinished. A few of the menus and core apps don't support the phone's 120Hz refresh rate and so feel jittery as you move between them. And also, something that definitely cheapens the experience, you will find subtle adverts within the user interface. It's not a bad experience by any means. For the most part, this Realme UI 3, based on Android 12, is quite an interactive, tactile experience. It's filled with settings that you never even thought to ask for, and it's baked in apps like weather, rather premium. I was slightly concerned that Realme was going to continue its rather weak trend of 1 year of major software updates here, but for their flagship, they're committing to 3, which is fine. I would just refrain from thinking of this as some sort of transformative experience. Just because they have the new chip doesn't mean they're squeezing every last bit of utility out of it. And that brings me on to the cameras, because the performance of phone cameras is more and more being governed by processing power. This Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, for example, should technically enable next-generation dynamic range in photos. But in actuality, again, I assume because of a lack of time spent optimizing, this is pretty standard flagship performance. It does keep up with last year's top-end phones in most situations, but falls behind a little when it comes to low light. Oh, also, doesn't have a zoom lens. However, this is a ridiculously fun camera to use. There's so many options I don't even know where to start, and I love it. You've got your standard things like night mode, portrait mode, expert mode, etc., but also movie mode, which shoots in a cinematic aspect ratio, street photography, which gives you more data like exactly how far away your subject is, dual view video, which records 2 separate streams at once, microscope mode, which uses this little third camera and the not 1 but 2 separate flash modules to get 40 times closer to subjects. Very cool, but also kind of irritating that it's only 2 megapixels. ID mode, which turns a selfie into an actual usable passport photo, starry mode, which highlights stars in the sky, 3D mode, which identifies faces and separates them completely from the background, and of course, this 150-degree ultra-wide mode. It's a bit odd, in that the normal ultra-wide camera on this phone is, well, I mean, it's just normal. It's only when you go to more options and then specifically select 150 degrees that it gets crazy. But to be fair to them, even though it is kind of a hack, they've turned off distortion correction to achieve this wide angle. When you use it, it is genuinely, astonishingly wide. Okay, just to round this phone off, it also has a 5000 mAh battery, Dolby Atmos stereo speakers, 8 to 12 gigs of fast RAM, and 128 gig to 1 terabyte of fast storage. But on the downside, no IP rating, no SD card support, and also no headphone jack. So, on balance, it's really rather good. Like, assuming that the price does end up at around $750, like they've told me, and assuming that Realme follows through with their promised 3 years of updates, this is an A+. Okay, if you love watching my videos, then you probably love to learn. And if you love to learn, then you're gonna love this video's sponsor, Skillshare. So here's my situation. You might know that I post quite a lot on this YouTube channel and on my YouTube Shorts channel, but my Instagram has not been getting the love it deserves. I've never really known how to pose for photos. No one teaches you, and so most of my Instagram shots have just ended up being teasers for videos. However, I found this course about portrait photography on Skillshare by a girl called Jessica Kubesi, all about how to take good shots and how to look good in those shots. It's little things like lifting your chin, or how to use lighting, or how to make yourself look taller, and using some of the things I learned from this, I managed to get this photo, which somehow managed to rack up 160,000 likes from you. I still can't believe that number. But anyways, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description get a 1-month free trial to try it for yourself. So, we're in a new year, why not learn a new skill? To check out some of the most toxic tech fails on the planet, click here. Or to find out 50 facts about me, that video is here. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss. I'll catch you in the next one.